An Electron app has two types of processes that make it work. The first is the main process, and we only have one main process in an entire Electron app. Second is the renderer process. We can have more than one in each Electron app. The main process serves as our application's entry point. It's responsible for managing the application's lifecycle and controlling and creating windows, handling system-level events, coordinating communications between different parts of the application. And it is actually a Node.js environment, which means it has full operating system access. That alone can be a major security concern and is a very good reason to want to isolate it a bit. Now, our second type of processes is the renderer processes. And like we said, you can have more than one renderer, and that's because you can have more than one Electron window. Every Electron window has its own renderer process. Renderer processes, or renderers for short, are responsible for displaying graphical content. You can load a web page into a renderer process, or you can point to a local HTML file. All right, so our main process and our renderer processes are isolated. So how do we get them to communicate with each other? Well, that is where IPC communication or inter-process communication comes in, and that's what we will be learning about today. Let's start by creating an Electron app to learn by doing. So I'll create a new folder for my app. I'll call it Electron IPC. And to quickly create the application, we'll be using electron-forge, right? So I'll open my directory in Visual Studio Code, open terminal, and I'm going to use the command available on the electron-forge docs. So npm init electron app at latest, and then I need to write the name of my app. I'll call it Electron IPC, and I would like to integrate Vite with my app, so I'll use -- template Vite like so, right? And then I'll hit enter and type in Y for yes, because I want to install the create Electron app package. Right, and now we're gonna have to wait a bit. Right, while we wait, I would like to ask you to subscribe if you haven't already, and if you like the content so far, please hit the like button. Thank you. Oh, it finished. All right, so let's cd into our application. In this case, it's Electron IPC, and let's type in npm start and hit enter. All right, and here is our app. Great. Okay, now let's look at the files that were created for us. The ones we care about are in the source directory. And look here, main.js represents our main process. And if we look at it, we will find that it contains logic for creating the windows and handling our app's lifecycle. Let's focus on the create window function for a second. We'll find that it allows us to set dimensions for our window, but another thing it does is it sets a preload script, or it joins our window with a file called preload.js. Preload.js is very, very important for us because it serves as a bridge between our main process and our renderer process. It is called preload because it loads before any other scripts in the renderer process. To understand some more, let's start playing around. Let's go first to our main.js file, and let's add a line of code that would get our main window to always be on top, and set that to true. And here's our window again, and from now on it will always stay on top. All right, now let's imagine a scenario where we want to tell our user the version of Chrome that is running the version of Node and the version of Electron. All right, so let's go to our index.html, and we would like to delete this because we're not gonna be needing it. And let's create UI for displaying the versions. So let's maybe add an h1 element with versions, and let's add Chrome. That's where we'll be showing the Chrome version. So let's give it ID Chrome. And likewise, let's create placeholders for where we'll be showing the Node version and the Electron version. Give it the ID Electron. All right, now let's go to our renderer.js. Maybe we can just open it to the side, right? And we're not gonna be needing this code, so let's just delete it. Okay, and now let's get a hold of our h3 elements. I'll create const chrome and a document.get element by ID, and the ID is Chrome. Const node, and same thing, and const electron document.get element by ID, and the ID is Electron. All right, now all we need is the version numbers, and then we can append them to the inner HTML of our elements. But how do we get the version numbers in the first place? From what I know, we can do this using process.versions, which is a Node.js object. But we cannot really access Node.js from renderer by default. So what do? We can write a preload script that exposes parts of the main process that we want to expose. And to do this, we use context bridge. All right, so let's require it. So const context bridge equals require electron. Right, and now we want to call context bridge expose in main world method, and we want to create an object that we will be able to expose in the renderer process. So in order to be able to call it, or in order to be able to utilize it later, we will need to give this object a name or an API key. It could be any name we want. Because we're going to be showing versions, we could just call it versions. All right, and now let's create our object. And our objects will contain functions. We can name them whatever we want. The first one, let's call it Node. And Node should return the version of Node that we have on our system. So let's set it to process.versions.node. Okay. The second one is Chrome, and likewise, it's a function that should return the version of Node. So of Chrome, sorry, not Node. So process.versions.chrome. And the last one is Electron, and it should return the version of Electron. So let's set it to process.versions.electron. All right, so now let's go back to our renderer process, and let's try to append the versions to our elements. So for Chrome, that Chrome dot inner text and plus equal. Let's try versions dot Chrome. Oh, that's it. Very cool. All right, we want to add a space before that. Nice. All right. So versions is the name of our API, or the name that we have given to our object, and Chrome is the name we have given to the function inside our exposed object. And now let's add in the version for Node. So node.innerHTML and plus equal versions.node. Yay, there it is. All right, same for Electron. So Electron, inner HTML, and you want to append the version of Electron. Right, super cool, right? All right, now let's say we want to send an IPC message from renderer to main. All right, let's say we create an input field where our users can type in a URL, and then when they click a button, the page that this URL points to is rendered in our window. All right, so let's give the input area an ID. Let's say input area, and the button, let's have it say submit, and let's give it the ID URL submit. Maybe we can give our input area a placeholder and have it say enter URL. All right, and now let's go to our renderer.js and let's get a hold of our elements. So const input area document dot get element by ID. The ID is input area. All right, and likewise, let's also get a hold of our submit button, document dot get element by ID, and the ID we've given it is URL submit. All right, and now let's add an event listener on our submit button. So submit button dot add event listener on click, and on click we want to get a hold of the URL that was inputted. So let's create the variable URL and let's set it to input area dot value. All right, next up we want to add in an if statement to make sure that something was inputted in the input area and it's not just white space. So we can add if URL dot trim is not equal to an empty string. Then we want to send a message to our main process with the URL so that we can open a new window that renders that page. So to send a message from renderer to main, we use ipcRenderer, and to use it, we go to our preload.js, just like we've done before, and we're also going to use the context bridge with the expose in mainworld method. And let's give the exposed objects an API key or a name. Let's call it open new window. And let's define a function inside and call it, for example, open URL. And we want to pass the URL as an argument. And then we're gonna need ipcRenderer. So let's import it, right? So ipcRenderer.send, and we want to send a message with the channel name. The channel name could be any string we want. Let's name it after this function. So let's name it open URL, and we want to pass our argument, which is the URL. Right? Simple, right? Okay, and now let's go to our main.js, and we want to listen on our message. So we've sent it with ipcRenderer. To receive it, we will use ipcMain. All right, so now let's add our listener somewhere here. After app when ready, then create window, we can add ipcMain.on. And here we want to input the name of our channel. So it's open URL. And the second argument is the callback function. So it writes event, and we want to pass in the URL argument. And then we want to create a new window. You know what? I'm going to comment out always on top for now. All right. And we want to create a new window. So I'm actually just gonna copy this part and I'm going to paste it in our callback function. And I'm just going to remove the web preferences part because I don't think we need it. And I'll put this code in new window. All right, and now I'll add new window dot load URL. And now let's uncomment the always on top true. Okay, here's our window again. Okay, let's go to our renderer process. And we want to add the method to send the message to the main process. So open new window dot open URL, and we pass in our URL. Now I think it should be ready. So let's try it. So I'm just going to copy this URL and paste it and click submit and check it out. It worked. Cool. All right, let's try another URL. Let's, for example, try capybara Wikipedia page. Okay, I'll copy it, paste it, and voila, we did it. Good job, you guys. All right, so now we know how to send messages from main to renderer and from renderer to main. But there's also a third pattern that we might want to use, and it's having two-way communication between main process and renderer process. So how about we make it so that a user could click a button that will open a dialog that would allow him to select a file, and then we will display the file path that the user chose. So let's create the button, and let's have it say select file, and let's give it the ID file select, and then let's add a paragraph with file path. Let's give it the ID file path. All right, now let's go to our preload. And just like we've done before twice, we're gonna use context bridge and expose in main world. And now it's time to decide on a name for our API. How about we call it open file API, and let's expose the function open file. And once again, we'll be using ipcRenderer, but we'll be using it with invoke instead of send. And let's decide on a name for our channel. How about we call it open-file. And next up, we want to go to our main process. And since our goal is to open a dialog that would allow our users to choose a file and then show the path that they've chosen in the renderer, we're going to use Electron's dialog module, and we want to use the showOpenDialog method. So let's scroll down to when ready then, and let's add our listener. So we'll be actually, I'm sorry, let's comment out the always on top because the window keeps respawning otherwise. All right, now let's add our listener. We'll be using ipcMain just like we've done earlier, but we'll be using it with handle. So usually when we use invoke, we use handle on the other side. Let's pass in the channel name that we have assigned, and it is open file in this case. So open-file. And now let's add the callback function, which is gonna be an async function in this case. And we will be using the dialog module, like we said. So await dialog.showOpenDialog. And we want to use object destructuring in order to know if the user canceled. So let's add const canceled, and also to get the file path. So file paths. And then we want to check if the user did not cancel. So if not canceled, we want to return the file path. Okay, and now let's go to our renderer and add an event listener. So let's get a hold of our file select button. So const file selector, say, and document.get element by ID. File select, and now let's get a hold of the path. So file path and document.get element by ID, file path. Right now, let's add an event listener on our file selector. So file selector.add event listener, and we want to add an event listener on click. And our callback is going to be an async function. We want to get a hold of the path returned from our main process. So we'll set const path to await, and we will await open file API dot open file. Await open file API dot open file, and then we want to show the file path in our file path element. So file path dot inner HTML plus equal path, right? Okay, let's try it now. I hope it works. Okay, let's select file. Let's get this one asimov, and the path is undefined, but the select file thing works. Okay, so what we've done is we've created a function here that should return the file path. Maybe we should go back to our preload function and add return to our open file function. Maybe it would work now, right? Let's try. Okay, let's choose Breakfast of Champions. So I love this book. All right, and here it is. Yay, we did it. High five. All right, I hope I recorded everything.